Hey ladies and gentlemen, just want to share with you a few maybe tips and tricks when it comes to sketching. As you sketch more, this stuff becomes natural to you, but I feel like we just got started on the pencil drawing in class, and maybe there are some things that this can be helpful. So let me just talk about my tools that I have right here. This is my sketchbook, of course, and here's a drawing that I'm working on. I have a small sheet of very fine sandpaper. Any kind of sandpaper will work fine, and this will help you to clean off your tortillon or to even sharpen your tortillon if you want to have a more defined point. Just scratch like this. I'm making my video move, sorry. And clean off the excess, and then you'll have a much finer point. And you'll be able to really direct where your tortillon goes. I don't think everyone in my class learned that tip yet, so that's super important. I'm working today with a B pencil and with a 6B pencil. I like to have a range when it comes to hardness of lead. It seems like it's easier to manipulate for me. You will find what works for you though. This is just my preference. This is what I taught you in class. And you, of course, in your packets have a range of lead. If you don't have a wide enough range or you don't care for that, you can always revert to our normal number 2 pencil. Even a mechanical pencil will do fine as well. Now, mechanical pencils, there are some benefits to them. They're easier to keep sharpened for sure. And there's different thicknesses of lead. So this is a number 2 with a 0.9 thickness. And so this is going to create a really wide line. But some of your other ones with a little bit less thickness of lead, like this one here, you can see the difference there. There we go. This one's going to create a much sharper line. And your number 2 lead is still soft enough that you can get some really good definition. And you can even shade really well with it. 2 is just like if you have a softer lead, it shades even better. Okay, so here's just the base of my sketching. I'm really challenging myself lately to work on contrast, because it seems like it's really easy for me to sketch something well, but it usually ends up pretty light. So one thing that I'm learning is that with what I have to do with contrast is work on being okay with darkness in my pencil. And that's a little bit unnerving because we know as artists that, like, if we have darkness, then it may be really hard for it to come back up. So you have to kind of commit a little bit to some of these lines that you're making. For instance, I want my candle to have a little bit of a sootiness at the very tip of it. So I'm going to go in with my 6B now and really sharpen. Notice that I sharpen my pencil as well. So if you don't have a good sharpener at home, one thing you can do to combat that is to just use a piece of scratch paper, and maybe you might have to use a knife if you're not comfortable with that. Maybe have a parent or someone who's a little bit has better knife skills to give you a little bit more length to your lead, and then you can simply just rub out on another sheet of paper until you come up with the finest point that you can. Okay, and then like I said, the real issue here for me is to being okay with contrast. So I know that the lightest my paper can get is the color of my paper, and if I'm trying to draw light especially, I can't get any lighter than that. So everything else has to be just slightly darker in order to make that light really bounce off. So I'm just going to keep working a little bit with my soot. Notice my pencil lines, my strokes are very, very small and very, very light. I've got a very light touch here. That's important. because if I'm working too hard, first of all, it's not going to come up, but I'm going to also have better control if I have a lot of just light touch. Okay, and then I'm going to go back and darken those places that I know need to be darkened. I'm going to be okay with a little bit of imperfection here in the wick because I want it to appear like it's falling apart. And then as I get away from my flame, I want my wick to go more towards a neutral color as though that part isn't burning yet. So I'm going to leave a little bit of lightness right down here. Okay, here's my cylindrical object. Always think of those base shapes. So we definitely have a cylinder here. And my shading is interesting, but it's not quite accurate because if you notice this part here is where my darkest shade on my cylinder should be. So I'm just sticking with my 6B because that's going to give me the darkest option. Notice I'm fine with tilting my paper if I need to in order to make it more comfortable for my pencil to reach. And then I'm going to go right through the middle of this cylinder, match up where my crossover shadow is. And I'm just going to give a nice little base shadow all the way up. And I'm cross-hatching this both ways. I'm going to eliminate the candle, the wax strip for now. And I feel like I still need to go a little bit darker right there in the center. So I'm going to just keep working towards that darkness. Notice I'm not trying to get to that darkness all in one pass. I'd rather pass a couple times than smash everything in there and then really regret it if I've got too much graphite on my paper. So I'm going to give it a couple goes. And if I don't like it, I can always go back and fix it. Okay, tortillon time. Circular motion here. I'm going to move out the pencil, the cross hatching that I just made. Now, if you like that effect, please stick with it. Cross hatching is really cool. And if you're good at it, it looks amazing. So just keep on keeping on if you like that. Okay, and a bit of unevenness around the edges. So I'm going to touch that up with my eraser just so I keep maintaining my cylindrical view here. Ah, so much more dynamic already. And then I'm going to go back in and consider where my shadows fall, like with the candle drips. Super light touch here again, but I'm just going to really define. I want to have kind of a bit of an obvious shadow, but as I get in towards these drips, I'm going to stay darker there. And I'm just going to define that edge a little more. Okay. Now I'm trying to mirror the idea of these drips kind of falling on each other here. First attempt here, and I'm not super good at it. And I'm not using any kind of a reference. So don't be too judgy. And I'm just going to draw that shadow up onto my drip. If I feel like I've lost some integrity of this end here, I can go back with my eraser and sharpen that contrast. Ah, that looks better. And I went over a little bit, so I'm going to have to sharpen the wall behind it as well. But that's the benefit to going nice and smooth and even with your graphite, is that you don't overwhelm your paper and you have the chance to rework it if you need to. Okay. Now that the base of my candle is darker, I'm going to be able to have a lot more contrast in with this light. So this part here, just centering around the wick, that's going to be my absolute lightest point. And I need to get a little bit, just maybe slightly, some shadow in the background so that my lightest point is right there. And what I'll probably work with, again, using the, sorry, scoot up just a little bit, using the edges of my pencil to just get a really light layer of graphite. Just gonna stay really light and easy with this. If you have cotton Q-tips at home or cotton balls, that's another really wonderful way to work with blending. You do have a tortillon in your packet, but cotton balls are nice as well, and some artists really prefer them to tortillons for a lot of different reasons. Okay, and now I'm going to work on the flame itself, because my flame, the center of my flame is going to be the lightest. So down here, just outside of the cusp of that center of my flame, I'm going to work on getting a little bit of tonality in there. This is going to help my flame appear a little bit more realistic and a little bit more vibrant. I know it seems weird. It's like flames are supposed to be really bright, and they will be really bright. Notice I'm trying to not touch my earlier lines too much. And since our touch is so light, we can always go back and erase if we're not happy. But I just want to point out, look at how much more brilliant the center looks now because I have that tonality inside my flame. I'm going to keep things really light right here at the base. And just for argument's sake, if I don't like this, I may be undoing it. But I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow in the exterior of my candle just to help that little edge pop out. And now I'm getting rid of my contour lines. That's important to me with sketching, is to remove those contour lines. Some of you, that's your style and that's a stylization choice, that's fine. But for myself, I'm really working towards trying to eliminate contour lines. Okay. So I like everything about this, but I think I am going to go back in and erase a little bit right here just to pop out my flame. If you have a brush on hand, brushing away eraser is preferable because that'll keep the oils of your hand off of your drawing. Okay, the last thing I might do is work on my background a little bit more, just to work on getting crispness. So you can have really crisp images without too many contour lines, but it takes a lot of practice and patience. Okay. And that's about where I'm going to stop here today. Obviously, there's more you could do. Definitely, I could work more on these shadows here, these crossing shadows. Now that I've widened out my candle, I've got my value in the center of it. It seems a little bit skinny, and I might want to come and widen out my exterior shadows just a little bit to make them a little bit more dramatic. Another thing I'm going to work on is the shadow and tonality here on my candle wax strip itself. I'm happy with it down here, but it seems a little bit too light up here. And the more contrast I can set inside the drip, the more realistic and the more lifelike that flame is going to appear. So I'm going to work on that too a little bit. Anyway, there you have it. Work on that contrast. Don't be afraid of darkening in order to make things appear lighter.